God bless you, dear ones. Welcome to the Word with Chester. Today we will begin study in chapter 22 of the book of Job. In our last study, we read about Job actually talking and speaking about the sovereign God. Today, Eliphaz now is going to give his final speech, and he's going to accuse Job in his final speech, and also exhort Job in his final speech. So let's get the picture of what's going on here now. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time from the start of this book, I want you to get the picture of what's going on after Job had suffered so and is yet in his suffering. Well, he suffered when he lost everything that he had, all of his wealth, because Job was an extremely wealthy man, and then he lost it all. And not only did he lose all of his material things, his material wealth, he lost his children. They were killed in a disaster where a strong wind blew the house down and fell on them and killed them. So get the picture now, the suffering of Job. And then after all of that had happened, now he is a very sick man, a sick man with boils from the soles of his feet all the way to the top of his head, or to his crown, the Bible says. So you have to understand how sick he was. And then his first of all, his wife told him that he should curse God and die. He was so sick. His own wife talked Job's words himself, said, "You talk like a foolish woman." And indeed she did, telling him to curse God and die. And then his own friends, three of his friends, came to dialogue with him or talk to him, supposedly to encourage him, but it's evident, as we read, that they had devised whatever plan that they did, trying to get Job to do something or admit that he's a wicked man or a terrible man. But I also want you to get the picture that God had bragged on Job, and that's the reason he was in the condition he is in here, because God had called him a perfect and an upright man. Now today we'll start our lesson off with Eliphaz giving his final speech now, and in his final speech he's going to accuse Job, and then he's also going to exhort Job. So I want you to get, as we're reading, what Eliphaz will say in this particular chapter. I want you to know that it is a great book. The book of Job is a great book, and it lets us know so many things about God. It lets us know things about humanity and how humans think, and we can also talk about how they started thinking the way they did, because we have to look at a lifespan. When a person does well and does right in the sight of the Lord, he blesses them. And then if a person does wickedly, they usually come to a terrible demise. And so they're putting all of that logic into talking to Job, because he had gone through such great suffering. And so they're using that logic. But what you and I need to get out of it, out of all of this reading that we're reading, that every situation is not the same. Every course of happenings is not the same. Some things are God ordained or God inspired, and even if God does not do it himself, he gives Satan permission to do certain things. And this was the case here with Job. God brought Job's name up to the devil, and the devil, he went to exercise everything that he could to make Job curse God to his face. Now get that picture. That was a dialogue between Satan and God. And here now we're going to begin our reading today, where Eliphaz now giving his final speech. Keep in mind he's he's going to accuse Job and also going to exhort him. Well, we will read from verse 1. Then Eliphaz, the Temanite, answered and said, Can a man be profitable unto God, as he that is wise may be profitable unto himself? Now, Eliphaz now, he's starting out with questions. He's giving questions now, and some people use that method in trying to get their point across. They will ask questions for you to ponder so that you can get to see their side. And Eliphaz now is asking questions. That was the first question. Can a man be profitable unto God, as he that is wise may be profitable unto himself? He asked that question. Now let's read on. Is it any pleasure to the Almighty that thou art righteous? Or is it gain to him that thou makest thy way perfect? Can you see? Asking questions now. In other words, he's expecting, I'm assuming he's expecting Job to answer these questions, and in talking about it in the dialogue, maybe he thought Job would come to the conclusion of his way of thinking or trying. So remember now, he's asking questions. He's going to ask another here. Will he reprove thee for fear of thee? Will he enter with thee unto judgment? Now, can you get the picture? Now, Eliphaz now is actually talking about God. In other words, we get that from verse 1, can a man be profitable unto God? So he's talking about God in all of these questions. Will he, speaking of God, reprove thee for fear of thee? Will he enter with thee unto judgment? Now let's read on. Are not thy wickedness great, and thine iniquities endless? For thou hast taken a pledge from thy brother for nothing, and stripped the naked of their clothing. Now let's read on. Thou hast not given water to the weary to drink, and thou hast withheld bread from the hungry. Now he was first asking questions, and then he went into his accusations against Job. For thou hast taken a pledge from thy brother for nothing, and stripped the naked of their clothing. Now he's accusing. Thou hast not given water to the weary to drink, and thou hast withheld bread from the hungry. But as far as the mighty man, he had the earth, and the honorable man dwelt in it. Now get the picture of what they're saying now, trying to give Job this contrast about an honorable man. He had the earth now, and about an honorable man dwells in it, talking about the earth now. Shall we read in verse 9, thou hast set widows away empty, and thine arms of the fatherless have been broken. So he's trying to bring up things, surmise that Job had not did this. He not given to the poor of those that were in need. Thou hast set widows away empty, and the arms of the fatherless have been broken. Can you see what he's saying? That Job, maybe it's to the point that you're not a giver. Maybe you don't give to the needy is the reason you got broke down. Can you see they're trying to surmise why Job lost everything and trying to put this in his head? Another thing comes to mind when I said that you have to watch what people feed you. You better watch what they're saying to you and not not take it into your spirit or into your heart. Why? Because if you started to believe these things, it will cause you to lack faith in the true and the living God. Now let's read in verse 10. Therefore snares are around about thee, and sudden fear troubleth thee. Or darkness that thou canst not see, an abundance of water cover thee. Can you see what he is actually saying? In verse 12, let's read, is not God in the height of the heavens? Question now. He's asking a question. Isn't God in the heights of the heaven? And behold, the height of the stars. How high are they? Asking Job these questions. Now let's read on. And thou sayest, how doeth God know? Another question. How does God know? Can he judge through the dark clouds? And how does God know, he's asking? Can God see everything? And you have to understand that when sometime when people ask you questions, they know you know the answer to it, but they're trying to get you to see something in a certain way. And I know he knows that God sees all things. But he asked that question in verse 13, and thou sayest, how doeth God know? Can he judge through the dark clouds? And even in that verse, they're taking something that Job had said in prior verses. Can you get the picture? In this dialogue now, Eliphaz has already spoken 2 times. Now he's speaking a final time. So in all of that dialogue, they're picking out Job's words now and trying to get him to use his own words against him. I hope you can see that. Shall I read 13 again? And thou sayest, how doeth God know? Can he judge through the dark cloud? In other words, can he see through the clouds? He sits on high. He's God. He's in heaven, if you please. Can he look down here through the clouds? Verse 14, the thick clouds are a covering to him that he seeth not, and he walketh in the circuit of heaven. Well, he's making a statement which is not true, but yet he's making it. The thick clouds are covering unto him that he seeth not. Well, I don't care how many clouds are over. God sees everything. He knows what you do. He even sees into your thoughts and into your mind. So you can't get one over on God. But some people's logic is that they can do things in the dark and nobody will know. But you have to understand God knows about it. Now let's read in verse 15. Hast thou marked the old way which wicked men have trod? Have you thought about the old way, the process of time in our history, if you please? Have you seen where men have thou not marked the old way which wicked men have trod? Haven't you seen the old way that wicked men have trod and the things that have happened to them? Can you look back over time and see instances where wicked people, they might have looked good for a while, but they were brought down to desolation or to nothing? Shall we read on? Who were cut down out of time, whose foundation was overflown with a flood, overflown with the flood. Now that brings something to my mind. I hope I don't get us off our study here. But we were talking about whether this book or Job's life, if you please, Job's life was before the flood in the antediluvian civilization, or after the flood, or post antediluvian. Well, I want you to understand. I draw that from what I just read. Who were cut down out of time, whose foundation was overflown with a flood. Well, you know, back in Noah's time, that a flood came and took everybody off the earth, but except for Noah and his family. his sons and their wives, and his wife, and Noah, and then all of the animals that he brought upon the ark. They were the only ones spared. Can you see? Can you see what? That where I'm drawing that from, talking about that flood. Now let's read on in verse 17. Who said unto God, depart from us, and what can the Almighty do for them? Let's read on. Yet he filled up their houses with good things, but the counsel of the wicked is far from me. I'm going to read. The righteous see it and are glad, and the innocent laugh them to scorn. In other words, the innocent laugh at the ones that they would call wicked, that have lost everything or that have went through certain troubles, and that shows that they might have a bad spirit there. Anytime that you have to laugh at somebody that's down, laugh at somebody that's suffering a calamity, it shows a bad character in you. You should have compassion. Even if a person was bad and didn't do the right thing or make the right choices, when you see them down, you shouldn't glory in that and scorn them, if you please. Can you get what the writer's saying? You shouldn't laugh at them. If you can't encourage them, you should just leave them be. Now let's read in verse 20. Whereas our substance is not cut down, but the remnant of them the fire consumeth. Now talking about the wicked. Now let's read on in verse 21 here. Acquaint now thyself with him, and be at peace. Thereby good shall come unto thee. He's telling Job now, acquaint yourself with God, and good will come upon thee. And I want you to get this now. Even though Eliphaz and then all of the three friends of Job, they said some correct things, and that's one hard thing to look through and think about when somebody is saying something that may be correct, and then in their correctness they're wrong because they have a wrong motive in what they're saying. You can say the right thing and be wrong. What do you mean? You can say the right thing to hurt someone, and God sees your heart and your spirit. You can say something that's true, but use it as something to damage someone or hurt someone. You telling the truth is not right. Why? Because your spirit is off and your heart is off. Now let's read in verse 22. Receive, I pray thee, the law from his mouth, and lay up his sword in thine heart. If thou return to the Almighty, thou shalt be built up. Thou shalt put away iniquity very far from thy tent. Then shalt thou lay up gold as dust, and the gold of Ophir as the stones of the brook. Yea, please excuse me, yea, the Almighty shall be thy defense, and thou shalt have plenty of silver. In other words, he's telling Job, if you do right, then you're going to have all of these things. But I want you to know, everybody's not going to be extremely wealthy, but yet God will always bless his people. But he's telling Job, if you do right now, remember what we read up in verse 21, acquaint now thyself with him, and be at peace. Therefore good shall come unto thee. In other words, get acquainted with God. And that's kind of a hurting and a demeaning thing when somebody's trying to tell you you don't even know the Lord, and you know you're saved. You got to know that you know that you know that you know that you're saved, because people will have you believing you not. And it takes faith to be saved, and you never want to lose that faith that it took for you to get saved, because that same faith is what it takes for you to stay. Can you get the picture? Now verse 25, yea, the Almighty shall be thy defense, and thou shalt have plenty of silver. In other words, he's saying you'll have plenty of money now if you just do and get yourself acquainted with God. You'll have everything you need. For then shalt thou have thy delight in the Almighty, and shall lift up thy face unto God. Can you get what he's saying to Job? If you do this and go get acquainted with God, then things will go better for you. Things will get right for you if you get acquainted with God. Can you see their attitudes and how they're talking to Job? Now let's read on in verse 27. Thou shalt make thy prayer unto him, and he shall hear thee, and thou shalt pay thy vows. Can you see? Thou shalt make thy prayer unto him. Talking about God. He's trying to tell Job that you have not been in a communication with God. Can you see how far off people can be out there in left field? And even in a normal situation, they may be talking something right, but you have to understand, if they're judging a matter, then they're not in the will of God, because saying words that are true in a judgmental fashion is not of God. I hope I said that plain enough to you. Shall we read in verse 28? Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy ways. Can you see? Now he's trying to get Job now into this mode where he's got to get himself acquainted with God. But again, I say, you got to know that you already know God, and never let people talk you out of that. In verse 29, when men are cast down, then thou shalt say, there is lifting up, and he shall save the humble person. Well, can't nobody knock that. When a man is cast down, then thou shalt say, there is lifting up, and he shall have the humble person. He shall save the humble person. And God does. If a person knows that they've been wrong and been in the wrong area, when you humble yourself, God will save you. He will deliver you. Can't nobody say nothing wrong with that. Now get that now. Let's read on in verse 30. He shall deliver the island of the innocent, and it is delivered by the pureness of thine hand. Is delivered by the pureness of thine hand. I'm discussing with myself. I may run out of time if I try to read chapter 23, so I'm going to stop here today. But I want you to know that Eliphaz now accusing Job and giving him advice in so many words, accusing Job, saying you really need to get right with God. And can you see that kind of demeaning to a person when you know you're already right with God, when somebody's trying to tell you to get right with God, or acquaint now thyself with him and be at peace, thereby good shall come unto thee. When they use an analogy for the normal consensus of things on you, judging the matter makes them right, makes them wrong rather. Even if they may be saying something that may be true, when they enter into judgment, can you get the picture? They show themselves because they're making accusations at you, not knowing facts, not having facts, going off of what ancient history had to offer for them to glean from, and what they have seen with their own eye. But I want you to know that every case is not the same. You have to keep that in your mind when you're dealing with people. Every case is not the same, and you should not judge every case the same. When you do, you end up in error yourself. And this is what Eliphaz is doing now, using words that could be true. Can you see they're trying to what we call stump Job? They're trying to get him to get into a frame of mind like they think he should have. But I want you to know that Job, I'd have to admire him. All the troubles that he went through, he never turned his back on God. He never went back mentally on God. I will say Job was discouraged sometimes and said some things that he shouldn't say. And as we read through the book, we're going to find that God's going to put Job in check himself. And you need to get that now. God knows how to deal with you as an individual. He knows how to even deal with those that are sent out to judge you. And we will find what God is going to do as we read through this book. If any of you would like to accept Jesus as your personal Savior, just repeat after me. Jesus, come into my heart. Forgive me for my sins. I'm sorry for the wrongs that I've done. I believe that you shed your blood on Calvary cross for my sins. I believe you were resurrected on the third day. If you said that simple prayer, I believe you got saved. Now find yourself a Bible teaching, Bible preaching church. Go there and let them speak into your lives. Always let them know that you got saved listening to the word with Chester Ministries. My dears, I want you to know that I love you. I love you with the love of the Lord. God bless you.